Welcome. If you like dice, or if you like backgammon, you've come to the right place. Today I'm going to show you an unusual and remarkable set of dice, which are interesting in their own right, and how they can be applied to backgammon to create a new and fascinating variant. Lately, I've been up to my neck in backgammon, figuratively speaking. Today, I found myself literally up to my neck in backgammon. This morning, my wife asked me, why are you dressed so formally? And I said, formally? What do you mean? And she said, well, you're wearing a white necktie? I said, a white necktie? Oh, no, those are backgammon checkers. Well, all kidding aside for the next few seconds, the reason I raised this backgammon board so high is that I want you to be able to see everything as clearly as possible, including my face, part of the time at least, if you can stand it. The first couple of minutes of this video may be a little dry, but please stay with me because you are going on a trip to the moon. Bang, zoom! It's Jackie Gleason on The Honeymooners. Or maybe on a trip to Mars. Get your ass to Mars. That's Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall. Here's a pair of standard six-sided dice, normal dice. And on each face you have a number on a die. And it's also called a number if you talk about both dice at once. The combination of the dice is also called a number. And I'll be sure to communicate clearly so you'll know which one I mean in context if and when I use that term number. Now there are many games in which two dice are rolled. And if you know the probability distribution of the dice, if you understand probabilities, you'll play those games better. And this is a chart of the probability distribution of normal dice. It's basically a 6x6 square turned 45 degrees. So that the rows and columns, I'm just going to call those slants to make it simple. All right. Now, the slant here has nothing but ones in it. The slant here, every cell has a 2 in it, a 3 in it, a 4, a 5, a 6. And going in the other direction, there's a 1 in everything on this slant, a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you're looking for a particular combination, you would look at the intersection between of the slants. So this is the one slant in this direction, the one slant in this direction intersects at 1, 1. So that combination, there's only one way, it only appears once in the chart, is one way out of 36. And here, this roll, 2, 1, that can be gotten in two ways, because it could be a 2 on this die and a 1 on this die. So there's two ways to roll that, and that is reflected in the chart. So if you have the 2 going this way and the 1 going this way, or the 1 going this way and the 2 going this way, either way gives you 2, 1. So it appears twice, as it should. Now if you look at the top of the chart, this is the total number of pips, and it ranges from 2 to 12. So here, 1, 1, that's 1 plus 1 equals 2. And here, 2 plus 1 equals 3. And here, at the 4 pip column, you have 2, 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 3 plus 1 equals 4. And the other way of rolling, 3, 1. So there's one way out of 36, 2 ways out of 36 to roll this, and 3 ways out of 36 to roll a 4. And as you continue going to the right in the chart, there's more and more combinations, higher and higher probability. So when you get to the 7, there's 6 possible combinations, 6 ways out of 36 to roll a 7. Now as you continue further to the right in the chart, the number of combinations starts heading back down. So you have 5 ways to make an 8, 4 ways to make a 9, and so forth, until you get to 12, where there's only one way to roll it, and that happens to be 6, 6. By the way, in backgammon, there's a rule that allows you to play doublets. You can play twice as many pips with doublets, but we're not going to apply that yet. One more symmetry in the chart. The middle row, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, and 6, 6 in yellow highlight. Those are the doublets. And everything else is non-doublets on the table, And the two halves of the table are perfectly mirrored. For example, this 6-2 here is reflected or mirrored by this 6-2 down here. And that is true of every non-doublet on the table. And if you want to count the number of rolls, you count the 6 doublets plus the 15 non-doublets in one half of the table, and that 6 plus 15 gives you 21 distinct rolls. If you add to that the 15 duplicated non-doublets in the other half of the table, you get 21 plus 15 equals 36. So there's 21 distinct rolls and 36 numbers. And if you count the 6 by 6 grid, 6 times 6 equals 36, it agrees with that. Now, are you standing up? If so, I urge you to sit down. And if you're already sitting down, you might want to fasten something over your lap to secure yourself in, or at least firmly grasp the arms of your chairs, because you might well faint from excitement or disbelief at what you're about to see. So feel free to pause the video, and when you feel that you're safe and ready, then you can resume. I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be here when you get back, I promise. Are you ready? Okay. These are the dice I've been raving about. These were designed by George Sicherman, who's a retired computer programmer and a talented puzzle creator, living currently in New Jersey, and not many years older than me. So there's still hope for me. He designed these dice in 1977, and Martin Gardner wrote them up the following year in an article featured in Scientific American magazine. And over here we have the same dice, but they've been flattened out so that you can see all 6 sides on both dice simultaneously. Now, what Mr. Sicherman discovered is a way to place positive integers on a pair of 6-sided dice such that the probability distribution of the sum of the pips is the same as on normal dice. Now, I realize that's an earful, but I will clarify. There is a complex mathematical proof showing that this is the only way to accomplish this feat, but we won't get bogged down with that. Let's just call this the miracle that it is. It's amazing. So what he did, the alternation itself, while unique, is really quite simple. He took a 5 and a 6 from one die and replaced it with an extra 2 and an extra 3. And on the other die, he took out a 2 and replaced it with an 8. That's right, an 8. So very simple, but incredible. And this is the Sicherman dice chart. If I can balance it there. Close enough. Okay, on the Sicherman dice chart, in the lower left corner here, it pretty much summarizes what I just told you there. And up here in the right corner, I've listed the combinations that have been taken out on the first row, and on the second row, the combinations that were added back in. And if a combination was subtracted twice or added twice, I underlined it. And if a roll was taken out completely, I marked it in red. And those rolls are 2-2, 5-5, 6-5, and 6-6. And if they were freshly added, I marked them in green. That's 8-1, 8-2, 8-3, and 8-4. I realize it's hard to see these numbers, but I'll give you a close-up in a minute. And the only other thing I want to say about this over here is that the rolls are arranged in columns, so that if a combination is taken out here with a certain number of pips, it is replaced by the same number of pips in the same column. So, for example, this column is 4 pips. 2-2 was taken out and 3-1 was added back in. And you can see that in the chart. The normal chart had a 2-2 here. It's now been replaced by a third 3-1. And the only other triple combination in the table is 4-3, where a third 4-3 replaces a 6-1 that has been taken out. The triple combinations are in blue highlight, and the single combinations are in yellow highlight, including 1-1 and 4-4, which are single combinations on normal dice. The only other double in Sicherman dice is 3-3, and you'll note that a 5-1 has been taken out and replaced by a second 3-3. So 3-3 is actually now just as probable as any mainstream non-doublet like 4-2, and more probable than some of the non-doublets that have been reduced from 2 combinations to 1. So when the smoke clears, you have the same probability distribution with the Sicherman dice that you have with normal dice. And if you look at the probability, the total number of pips up here, it ranges from 2 to 12 the same way. There's only one way to roll a 2, one way to roll a 12, except it's the roll of 8-4 instead of 6-6. There's still 3 ways to roll a 4, or 3 ways to roll a 10, and still 6 ways to roll a 7, etc. throughout the chart. And there are a total of 21 rolls, or 36 numbers. Exactly the same. Truly amazing. I promise to show you a close-up. This is the normal chart. Get everything in there. And so freeze your frame now, or come back to it later. Look at it whenever you want. And there's the Sicherman chart. And then I'll show you both side by side. See if I can get both in there. If you have good eyes. There you go. Okay. Now, the real fun begins, especially for those of you who play backgammon. In fact, if you don't play backgammon, you may not be interested in the rest of this video, but there we go. That's backgammon, not Scrabble, believe me. So what I'm going to, this is for the first time in history, for the first time anywhere by anyone, I'm introducing you a variant of backgammon called Sichgammon. Now, Sichgammon is a combination of Sicherman dice and backgammon. Now, you may well ask, if the fellow's name that designed these dice is Sicherman, then why am I not calling it Sichgammon? Well, if you're playing a game against a very, very, very young person, like maybe someone under 40 years old, then Sichgammon could be a compliment to the game. Whoa, dude, this game is sick, which means extremely cool. But the long-standing dictionary definition of sick, which people are familiar with, would tend to imply that Sichgammon, or worse yet, Sichergammon, would make one feel annoyed or bored or nauseated. So please pronounce the CH as you would in the word checker, making it Sichgammon, or as you would in Chicago or Michigan or Chouette, which would make it Sichgammon. Now, between those two, I personally prefer Sichgammon because I think it rolls off the tongue more easily. But they're similar sounding, so take your pick. And I don't need these anymore. And I'm just going to put these off to the side so it'll help you remember the name, that what we're talking about is Sichgammon. Put that over here. And there are many cool aspects to Sichgammon. One is that with an opening roll of 3-1, that's the only way you can make your 5 point on the opening roll. I think someone even wrote a book about it. Whereas in Sichgammon, there are other rolls that will make your 5 point. Have you ever slotted your 5 point with an opening 6-2? Or seen someone else do it, perhaps? Well, 6 and 2 make 8. Okay, so you have 8 pips on one die. This can be played with one die, which means that you can cover with a 3 or a 1 with the other die. So that means that with Sichgammon, you have rolls of 3-1, 8-3, or 8-1 to make your 5 point. and that's 6 combinations instead of only 2. Isn't that wonderful? Now, before I receive a letter of protest from Phil, I just want to point out that the second player also has those combinations. He can roll, when it's his turn, he can roll 3-1 or 8-3 or 8-1. Or for that matter, he also has double 4s, double 3s, and double 1s that the first player didn't have. So that partially mitigates the advantage of the opening roll. Besides, there are bigger fish to fry. For example, roll of 1-1, double 1s in backgammon, double 2s, double 3s, double 4s, double 5s, and double 6s. There's 6 different ways of rolling doublets. In Sichgammon, you only have 1-1, 4-4, 3-3, and 3-3. Only 4 ways of rolling doublets. And by the way, the average pips are fewer. There's only 11 pips on average for those doublets versus 14 pips in a backgammon doublets. But the main thing is that there are fewer doublets. Because in backgammon or Sichgammon, doublets are jokers. They're great rolls. Because you can divvy up them into 4 parts and apportion them however you want. And also in a speed bear-off, you can take 4 checkers off instead of only 2 if you roll doublets. So doublets are very lucky rolls, and there are fewer of those lucky rolls in Sichgammon than in backgammon, for those of you who pay attention to such matters. Now, returning to the opening stage of the game, it's generally considered reckless to slot your 7-point in the very early stage of the game, whereas coming down to the 9-point is considered relatively safe. And the reason for that can be easily seen because you've got direct, if you just look at the direct shots, there's 11 ways to hit here and 0 ways to hit here. Whereas in Sichgammon, there's 6 ways to hit directly and 6 ways to hit directly, either way. Because there's only 1 6 on the die, and now there's an 8 on the die. So in backgammon, reasonable, unreasonable. In Sichgammon, semi-reasonable, semi-reasonable. It's more balanced. And here's another little tidbit. If you roll 6-5 in backgammon, you can often play this move, which is termed a lover's leap. Now in Sichgammon, there are no 6-5 on the dice. It can't be rolled. Uh-oh. Does that mean we lose the beloved, heartwarming, soul-stirring lover's leap? Actually, no. Because instead of a 6-5, you can achieve the same thing with an 8-3. That becomes the new lover's leap. Our souls remain intact. Am I done yet? No, I'm just getting warmed up. It's Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. So if you get hit and you roll 6-6 in this position, how do you feel? Has that ever happened to you? It happened to me once or twice, and it was really upsetting. It's downright irritating, don't you think? Well, in Sichgammon, there is no double 6. You can't roll it because there's a 6 on this die, but no matter how hard you look, you won't find a 6 on this die, so you can't roll that. And even though 8s are now blocked from the roof in Sichgammon, you can't roll 8-8 and you can't roll 8-6. Those rolls don't exist either. So there's no way to fan. Now just imagine the peace of mind knowing that in Sichgammon you can never fan in this position. Just imagine. And that reminds me, the 8-point is just as valuable as the 6-point in this regard in Sichgammon. If you hit the opponent, you're blocking them from the roof with 8s. So white can't fan here, just like black can't fan here, unless another inner point is made. But you do restrict the movement. For example, if he rolls an 8 on one of the die, he can't come in with the 8, which means he has to play the other number somewhere else. He might not prefer to do that. For example, Here, if he rolls an 8-4, he would like to come in on the 8 and hit with a 4, but that's not legal. He has to come in with a 4 and play the 8 elsewhere, and that's a lot less damaging to you. Now, let's take a look at what happens in backgammon. Yes, I've got to leave those there. When you're on the roof against a closed board. Oh, okay, now I got it. Now there you are, stuck on the roof, just as miserable as can be. You're deprived of the fun of moving. You can't demonstrate your astonishing checker play, and you have no real winning chances. It's depressing, and it's even worse for players that have recently learned to play the game. Some novices will just quit backgammon, when they have to be in this situation, and they'll never play again. It's no wonder we lose so many budding prospects, emotionally destroyed in the primes of their lives. Now, some of you may have, if you noticed, you can come in with an 8 in Sichgammon, preserving your dignity and amazing your friends. Boom! What a happy day! That's Eddie Murphy in Trading Places. Experts and novices alike can rejoice. Now, some of you may have noticed that if this point is made, good for you, you're very alert. Black is completely closed out, can't move. But keep in mind that this structure requires almost all of white's resources to make it. There's only one spare checker here. So it would take great roll precision to make it, and it's hard to keep that structure for long. Now, while we're at it, note that if white reaches this position, white can bear off. Doesn't have to bring these checkers in, because this is essentially part of the inner board. You can bear these off with 8s. Okay, so you could bear this. You can bear off with 6-4 here. They're considered already in, or you can bear off with an 8-3. Okay, just treat this like a 7th point that's in your board. Now, if you have checkers out here, these have to be brought in just like if you had these already in backgammon. These have to be brought in before you can bear off. And in Sichgammon, same thing. These have to be brought in before you can bear off. It's only the 8 point that you can have out here. And then once that's done, you can resume your bear off. And supplementally, if you play this ace, it's probably not very efficient, because it means you have to lift this again before you can resume your bear off. That might waste time. Now, returning to the position we had here. Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't it. This is it. This leads to a paradoxical variant. If we slide everything down 3 pips this way, including the guy on the roof, so you end up with this, and this goes to here. Again, black is completely blocked. Okay, but if you move this back here, you can get out with an 8, and if you move it back here, you might want to not come up with a deuce. You might want to play the deuce elsewhere. Instead, you might want to wait for an ace, and then you can escape the trap with an 8. Pretty cool, huh? Now, if you have 2 checkers back, now there's a different set of criterion, but we'll get into that in a minute. But I want to tell you a little story first. About 40 years ago, I entered a backgammon tournament in Chicago, as it happens, and my first round opponent was a beginner who had never played in a tournament before and entered the championship division by mistake. I'd never heard that one before. And when he told me this, I suggested we go to the tournament director to see what we could do. So we explained the situation. Unfortunately, it was deemed to be too late to get him into the beginners division. I didn't care how they handled me. But my opponent was visibly upset. And because he had invested a lot of money in the tournament, he could have saved all that money if he entered the beginners, and he would have had a better chance to win a prize. Here he has virtually no chance to win a prize. So it's kind of like a double whammy. Fortunately, my opponent was a nice guy, and he decided to take a philosophical stance, chalk this up to education. He would be a sacrificial lamb, lose to an expert in the main flight, lose to an expert in the consolation, lose to an expert in the last chance. In other words, lose, 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 but learn. And I thought that was a pretty healthy attitude. So we played our match, and as you have seen other beginners play, he has a tendency to stack his checkers too safely in the beginning of the game, and that gives him no flexibility. And meanwhile, I'm building up my prime, sometimes having to recycle a checker or two to do it. And then he has to start leaving blots because he can't play safely from there. And I hit him and put him back. So he'd typically end up with a crushed board and 2, 3, or 4 checkers on the ace point. The ace point, because he was kind of afraid to split off of it, just like he was afraid, to play. He had to play safely everywhere. And when he did have the courage to split off with a 2 or 1, sometimes he ended up with the 23 point or the 22 point. So let's give him this as actually an above average case for him, but let's just give that to him. The problem for me was that whenever I broke my outside point, he would roll the number that he needed to get out. So he would roll double sixes in this position, or perhaps a 6 followed by a double sixes, and then proceed to continue to outroll me. He'd roll bigger enough than me that he would win the race. So we got into this type of position almost every game, and he ended up winning the majority of these types of games, which is incredible. Now, we've all lost these types of games, but he just did it repeatedly. And now, granted, I've had my fair share of the other side where I've turned around miserable, terrible, slimy games because by rolling the lights out, even a series of such games. Some of you have probably even seen me do it. But this match was a special outlier for me. I mean, I've never had so many of these games turned around against me if you add them all up in a tournament that's a week or two long and you count all the matches and money games together, let alone in a single match, in my entire backgammon career, and I've been playing since 1975. So special outlier, definitely. So anyway, my bewildered opponent ended up beating me 15-14, and then got destroyed in his other 3 matches, which made me look even sillier. But I'm kind of glad I lost, because if I hadn't lost, I probably wouldn't have remembered what happened. And then you would have been deprived of the joyous experience of listening to me tell this riveting story. Be that as it may, the story does have a point related to the subject matter, which is that if this had been Sichgammon, that would have been a different story, because in Sichgammon you have a lot more control. You're a much bigger favorite when you have a prime against an anchor, or more than one anchor. So in a situation, let's let him escape a checker. Okay, we'll give him the benefit of that. We'll give the same position, escape a checker. We'll improve his board, and we'll even promote his anchor. So this is miles better for white than the other position I just showed you. And yet, if you're playing black, you still have a powerful sense of control, a feeling of control. And I'll show you why. If you just clear your points in the normal fashion, systematically coming in, and in the meantime, let's say he does something like this. Okay. He cannot escape with 2 checkers at the same time. Not previously and not even now, because there are no double 5s or double 6s on the dice. There's not even an 8-6 or an 8-5 or a 6-5. Those combinations are completely gone from the dice. And so as far as running is concerned, the best he can do is run out 1 checker. And of course, that will give you the opportunity to point on the blot that's left behind, or attack the blot that's left behind. You'll have some kind of a skillful decision whether you should hit or not. So from that aspect, there's more luck in backgammon, and there's more skill in Sichgammon. So if he stands pat, by choice or otherwise, you can then clear your last outfield point, and this is his first opportunity to run, and he can do that with an 8-4, or his biggest roll, the biggest roll on the dice, is double 4s. And even if he does that, you are now bearing off your checkers, which makes you a pretty insurmountable favorite, especially since he cannot roll double 6s or double 5s on the next roll either, or the roll after that. So that makes it even more improbable that you'll lose this game. And that's if he has the 22 point. If he has the 23 point, then he can't leave with both checkers simultaneously until you break the 6 point. And if he has the 24 point, he can't leave with both checkers simultaneously until you break the 5 point. And by that time, you may be gammoning him. Harumph, just try to let a beginner beat me at Sichgammon. Okay, now that I've got that out of my system, I just want to tell you one more thing regarding the opening roll. In backgammon, the way you determine who rolls first, you each roll 1 die. If they match, you each pick up your die, it goes back in your cup, you roll again, and as soon as one player rolls a higher number than the other, this player wins the opening roll and gets to play that number. In Sichgammon, it works differently because the 2 dice are different. And it happens that no matter how you do it, you're either going to skew the opening roll distribution, or one player will be a big favorite to win over the other to win the opening roll. So what you have to do instead is you each roll, let's say, the big Sichgammon die, or you can each roll a backgammon die, and whoever gets the higher die goes first. Or you can even flip a coin. It's really easy to decide who goes first. And once you decide that, then that player just grabs the 2 dice and rolls them. And that's the opening roll. Now, if he rolls a doublet, then he re-rolls. Just like in backgammon, you can't have an opening doublet. So that's a long-winded way of explaining that something that just takes 2 seconds at the beginning of the game. But I want you to be aware of it because I'm hoping that you'll play some Sichgammon. Now, you can get your Sichgammon dice, which are generically called Sicherman dice, online. They'll be a lot smaller than this, of course. This is just a demonstration model. Just for about $6 a pair. And one pair is enough, but I recommend getting 2 pairs so you don't have to share a pair of dice with your opponent. Or, if you prefer, you can make your own Sichgammon dice, which is kind of fun. I'm going to show you how to do that. Let me just get my bag of tricks here. Okay, so do that without knocking everything over. This is a set of Monopoly dice, and this is from an older board game. This is from Yahtzee. They're 5 dice, so you even have a spare part. Backgammon precision dice of various sizes. Backgammon dice from travel sets. And you don't even have to have dice per se, as long as you have cubical objects. So as long as you find 2 or 4 of these that are the same size, you're good to go. These are great. These are boggle cubes, big boggle and small boggle. They both have them. All you need, other than your 2 dice or your 4 dice, is paper and pen, plus other common objects, depending. The best paper for this purpose, though not necessary, you can use paper and glue instead, is label paper. It's sticky on one side. You see how that peels off? So that's really good. And you take your pencil and ruler and draw cross lines to make squares, and then you would take your marker or your pen and draw dots to make your the faces on your die, and then you just cut them out and stick them on the dice. Now they actually have even better pre-cut label paper with the squares already cut out for you. You want them to be the right size. You want them to be slightly smaller than the face of the die that you're using. So take it with you to the stationery store or measure it before you go. You can get this online too, or sometimes at other places like a dollar store. If you've got rounded corners on your die, which these have, and the Boggle cubes and all these backgammon dice happen to have rounded corners. If you've got those, you can use circles, preferable, if you got the right size. And you can even get them in color, which is what I used. I used Boggle cubes. I just grabbed 4 of these guys, and I took my marker and I marked the appropriate number of dots on 24 different stickers, and then I stuck them on the faces. And what I ended up with is, back this up here, my very own Sicherman dice. So it's just these covered with the yellow dot stickers. So you can make your own too, however you like to do it. And one more thing I'd mention is that it's a little nicer to put the 8 on the opposite side of the 1, so they add up to 9, and the 4 and the 5 on opposite sides, and the 6 and the 3 on opposite sides. So they all, opposite sides all add up to 9. And you can do that on the little die. There's such a way that you can add them up to 5 on opposite sides. So it's not necessary. You can stick them on any old way, and you'll be able to roll the correct probability distribution. But I just think the 9-5 scheme is a little more aesthetic, a little cooler, if you will. So once you do that, you're good to go. You're ready to play Sichgammon. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like, subscribe. Feel free to leave comments. I would prefer it if you actually play a game or two of Sichgammon. You can play against yourself, or you can play with a friend or partner. I prefer you do that before you comment, because then the people reading your comments will get a lot more out of them, and I will too. But in any case, I very much look forward to your feedback. Thank you.